Yeah, you're reading that title right. I'm reviewing not one, but 2 video games this time. Now don't worry, they're both animal themed, and they won't be the length of that Destiny review either. Both of these games I wanted to review for the reason that one is a first chance at getting into something I haven't before, and the other for what I feel is an underrated classic. So let's begin this video with a review of the 2016 release of Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank originally started off on the PlayStation 2 as the product of Insomniac Games, a studio known for other games like the original PlayStation line of Spyro games, the Resistance games, and the seemingly cool but rather short for an open world game, Sunset Overdrive. Ratchet and Clank was made during a time when mascot-inspired games were still a thing, especially for Nintendo. But unlike most, this franchise was able to remain popular with each game given its gameplay and humor, both of which I would not get to personally experience myself until now. I mean, most of the games I played were on Nintendo systems, while I only ever got to play JRPGs and a few others for the PlayStation 2. I guess I just didn't have the interest for this at the time, but now? I'd be on board with trying the other games out sometime. But what about this game? Well, it's more or less a reboot remake, as I would put it, because it's a remake of the first game, but as even one character put it, it's also a reboot of the series, assuming they choose to make more. Now, for both games I'm doing today, I'm using footage by other people, and will be credited throughout the video. But what sucks is I actually had my own footage for Ratchet and Clank, but for some reason my PS4 couldn't sync with my other accounts, and so I couldn't do what I did last time. And I still don't have another external hard drive that I could use, as a friend pointed out I could do as well, and I really didn't want to drop this, so I apologize in advance. With that out of the way though, let's begin the review. The plot of Ratchet and Clank centers around a young mechanic named Ratchet, a Lombax living on Veldin with his friend slash caretaker, Grim, who dreams of becoming a galactic ranger like his long-term hero, Captain Quark, who incidentally is narrating the game from prison for reasons. Ratchet's dreams are dashed though, when he learns that he doesn't have what it takes. However, not long after, a strange ship crashes on his planet with a small robot inhabitant. He saves the robot, who he names Clank, who reveals that he was a defect created in the factory of Chairman Drek, leader of the Blarg, whose plans threaten the very galaxy itself. So Ratchet agrees to help Clank warn the Galactic Rangers and join them in the fight against the Blarg. Now, the plot is definitely one where the humor helps move things along while occasionally providing some deeper meanings when appropriate. It's what these kind of games excel at since they focus on a balance for great gameplay with some fun storytelling, and in this case, I dig the use of its humor. It isn't badly executed. Many of them click and come in at the right time, and they do cover a good variety of satire.
That one comes with exclusive content if you pre-ordered through Gadgetron.
And even some self-awareness.
No problem. See you in the next reboot.
But because of how much time you spend actually playing the game, it never feels like you're taking it all in at once. There's always breaks in between the humorous dialogue, and you do get some really cool things, all thanks to the controls. You move about with the left control stick while the right controls your camera. X lets you do up to a double jump, while also letting you glide when able. You can attack with your Omni Wrench using square, while pressing R2 fires your weapon. You can change weapons either by holding triangle and releasing after you select one, but you can also press the directional pad to quickly choose from any assigned slots. There's other things too that come available as you go, like the jetpack, the grappling hook, and even grinding rails. There's definitely variety in what you can do, and the level design is well made to take advantage of these features. Combat can be a bit tricky though, as there can be a lot of enemies at once, and even when ammo can drop plenty and you can actually replenish it through Gadgetron's supply box, as well as obtain and or upgrade your weapons, I would die a lot because I didn't plan well enough or get too reckless. At least there's no life count, and you keep all the bolts and experience you get prior to death. Speaking of, there's 2 kinds of currency. The bolts, which are mainly used to purchase new weapons, and Raritanium, which is used to help upgrade your weapons. You select these nodes that grant the weapon passive upgrades, while circling the mystery spots give you a little extra skill for them. Hell, as you use your weapons, they gain experience like you would, and when you earn enough, you level up and get more health. And when the weapons get enough experience, it levels up too, often changing in form and use, as well as increased damage, but also unlocking more nodes to fill in. It gives the game some replayability where you might want to approach certain stages with a particular weapon over others, so you focus in upgrading that. Hell, I love the weapons this game has. The Combustor is a classic all-around ranged weapon that when upgraded to level 5, it can shoot 3 fireballs at once. There's also the Plasma Striker, which can cause critical damage on weak points, Mr. Zircon, who helps in attacking enemies, the Groovatron that makes everyone dance, and my personal favorite, the Sheepinator, as even recommended by Dr. Nefarious.
One of my personal favorites.
You can also unlock the Omega versions of these weapons by collecting a set of cards that match that particular weapon. Yeah, when completing sets, you often get some nice upgrades. You also get some other passive upgrades for your character for other card sets, but anyway, the Omega weapons can only be purchased during Challenge Mode, which is the game's New Game Plus, and lets you upgrade them to level 10. By that point though, being able to get the bolts and Raritanium needed to max them out should be no problem given some of the abilities that increase the amount you get. The Rhino weapon though, you have to find the rare cards for them before you can get it. But it's one of the most powerful weapons you can ever own, and I wish I had gotten it in my own playthrough. When you're not kicking ass on enemies, you'll often find yourself in other situations that step up the gameplay. There are sections where you pilot your ship, blasting away at enemies and trying to take them out through certain means. They're alright, but not as exciting as the kind of combat I would see during Star Fox Zero. You also can participate in hoverboard races, which can get you some nice goodies. But otherwise, the most notable thing is being able to play as Clank. Clank is not exactly combat efficient, and as such, he provides support for Ratchet as like his backpack, his jetpack and whatnot. He's basically Kazooie. But there are times where he has to go into places alone for what are basically puzzle sections, by picking up Gadgetron bots and using them to build bridges, power up generators, or jump on them to get to higher places. The sections can be quite good in getting you to think about how you need to approach each section, and they help bring more variety to the overall product. The other puzzle-like element that's worth noting is when using the Trespasser, you have to align these light beams to hit all the red marks. You can always auto-hack if you have trouble, but where's the fun in that? Boss fights are certainly something to be had. Many big and often feel like sponges, unless of course you spent time upgrading weapons, then it can alleviate some of the time spent with them. They can be quite dynamic though, like the fight with Mrs. Zircon, in which flying with the jetpack is a must. I won't spoil the final boss, but you already heard the name by now. Really, the gameplay is fun in that it takes you back to a time when games didn't always need to have heavy story-driven narratives to be good. They still are today, but for Sony and Microsoft fans, that doesn't come to them often. Again, I can't say much for previous games, but as a standalone game, Ratchet and Clank for PS4 is good, but not perfect. Like, one issue may be that the game is a bit linear than they make it seem, as you can go to places in any order, but it feels like you're going to do them no matter what, so it doesn't really feel all that optional. But I think the plot is the biggest weakness to this game. Like Hotel Transylvania, not everyone is going to enjoy the humor as the substitute for a non-deep and often cliched plot. I mean, here it's decent in that Ratchet is like a dreamer who learns the hard way the responsibilities of being a hero. I feel like it's done in a sloppy manner and that it feels disjointed. Let me put it like this. There are times where I know there's character development, like when the two become Rangers, it looks like Ratchet is going through a phase where he's letting the Ranger life cloud his judgment, while Clank is staying rational about what's going on, which may conflict their interests because Ratchet really wants to impress everybody. They just kinda drop in and out of it, mainly since you're still together during most of the game. I'm also disappointed they didn't go more into Ratchet's backstory, since even in these games, if such an opportunity is shown, just see this scene here, they would most likely do something about it, but they don't. Of course, people were more disappointed that they didn't have him be like he was in the original game, as just some jerk who improved over time, but I think if they did more with his character development here, I wouldn't mind him starting out nice. Hell, even Quark's character development feels incomplete, as you don't spend enough time with him to really take in the big revelation about him later on. And after the fight you have with him, it feels abrupt what happens next with him. As fun as the writing can be, it feels like bits and pieces were cut. And funny enough, most of the cutscenes seen are used in the movie that was released for the original game as well. Yeah, the game is meant to be based off the movie that's based off the original game. Though personally, you can go either way, as it's still a reboot of the series. But here's the thing. While the plot can work for a video game because of what I said earlier, when you take away the gameplay, it might not work well as a movie plot, because then it really becomes like Hotel Transylvania, in that it's all about humor, while plot isn't always deep. When you're getting joke after joke non-stop, and you aren't used to how the games do it, it might come off as another bad kids movie. Though funny enough, the movie does a better job at developing the characters because it actually brings up Ratchet's backstory a bit, as well as that one picture he had as a kid. It even makes Quark's character development more believable because the story flow is more consistent. I almost feel like there shouldn't have been a movie, but a game that used more completed cutscenes to better serve the story. Then maybe add more levels and objectives to make this game either a $50 game, or maybe a full-on $60 one if they push their limits. It has the replayability for what $40 can get you, so why not add some more? I just think splitting certain plot elements to a movie and game hurts its overall narrative, as otherwise it's good, but makes you think it could be more complete. Other than that, I can't say anything else, but I like this game. For what it is, it's a breath of fresh air from games that try to be super realistic and grim-dark. This is classic 3D platforming, but updated to a nice style, 1080p and 30 FPS. No, I am not calling the frame rate police. Why should that even be a thing? I'll go over more on that in a bit, but otherwise I will just say, if you have a PS4, I would recommend picking this title up. Whether or not you're a fan of the franchise or just getting into it, it's a fun platform shooter that shows how remakes can be done when you put effort into it. Next up, Star Fox Zero. Produced by Nintendo, it was also co-produced by Platinum Games, who, as indicated by Kamiya, have wanted to do a Star Fox game for a long time, but the closest they got prior to this was that one stage in Bayonetta 2. Well, their dreams have come true as they have created what I feel is one of the most immersive Star Fox games to date. Like Ratchet and Clank, it's another reboot remake of an earlier game. In this case, Star Fox 64. The basic plot is the same in that Andros declares war on the Lilat system, so Team Star Fox is called on to take him on. But apart from how the actual ending plays out, everything else is new and/or is meant to be an alternate take on pre-existing concepts, which you can easily tell with each stage you play. While I can see this being a bit more story-influenced than 64, it's definitely not on par with Assault in terms of amount. This is a game that focuses on providing what made 64 fun and innovating it to make it even better. As before, the game is mostly divided into two types: on-rail shooting and all-range combat. You shoot down enemies to rack up your hit count in hopes of getting a high score, while also putting up against bosses on occasion. While you mainly pilot the R-Wing, the game introduces two new vehicles. 3 if you count the training mode exclusive, but the first of which being the Walker. Integrated into the R-Wing, this baby lets you run on land and is used for sections that have you going into tight spaces that the R-Wing obviously couldn't fly well in. It's based off the Walker used in Star Fox 2, that cancelled Super Nintendo game, but here it reaches new heights in what it can do. You also have the Gyro Wing, a somewhat slow vehicle used primarily in the one stealth-oriented stage of the game, Zonus, in which you deploy this robot minion named Direct Eye, who is capable of hacking computers, which the walker can do as well as pick up and drop bombs. While this vehicle only gets one real stage to itself, it does show the potential of what other levels like it can do if more were made, as I do like them trying out new ideas since this is a game with space animals doing all the space things we would do in movies. The Landmaster returns in this game, but it later gains the ability to fly. Maybe not as effective as the R-Wing, but it can make for some fun moments when used. Really, the game plays out like the majority of Star Fox games ever released. But what makes it different, which is unfortunately a controversy to most people, is how it controls. To put it lightly, the controls in this game have separated people in saying that it's still a great game, and thank God for me, this game is a piece of shit! Well, as much as I hate to disagree with that guy, I have to disagree with him and say that the controls are not bad, you just have to get good. And I say this on the grounds that if people can use that to justify brutal, if not unfair difficulty in games like Dark Souls, as just you needing to be patient and adapt to a demanding difficulty curve to do cool things, I should be able to use that to justify controls that, while different and have a learning curve to them, aren't like most Kinect games where they don't work all that well and just require a bit of patience and to be able to adapt if you want to do cool things. I mean, if you can play Splatoon, you should be able to play this game no problem. The controls are a mix between standard methods and motion mechanics. The screen on the gamepad serves as the cockpit view, where moving the controller around moves the target reticle. This helps in precision aiming and for shots that you want to make without actually moving your vehicle. In that sense, you will likely need both TV and gamepad to play effectively. The left control stick moves your ship like normal, and during the R-Wing sections, it can also move the reticle around like in the previous games. The right stick lets you do things like boost or brake, and by double tapping, even do the barrel roll. ZR fires your laser, while holding and releasing it does a charged shot, while R fires off your bombs. Double tapping down on the left stick and up on the right does a somersault, though it's easier to just press X, while double tapping both sticks down does the reverse maneuver. Lastly, A lets your vehicle transform, or use direct eye in the gyro wing, while Y recalibrates the reticle to the middle of the screen. Now, while you can use the left stick to aim, oftentimes, mainly with the walker, you have to use the gamepad steering given how the thing moves. While the right stick can also act in changing the camera left or right, as well as hover and boost, it can be a bit frustrating at first how it's nothing like you've played before. But that's part of the experience, learning how things work and putting them to use as you go while getting better at it. Since like in 64, the better you got, the more that opens up to you. I say this because one of Star Fox's biggest selling points was its replay value. Apart from adventure, Star Fox has been all about replaying it and trying to get high scores, but they offered a degree of challenge by including alternate paths that can be triggered by fulfilling conditions that require you to do more than what you normally would. When you first play any Star Fox game, of course you're going to suck at the controls and how it even plays, but as you keep going, you keep getting better and eventually start finding these new areas and challenges. It's no different here. As you progress, you start unlocking new abilities that help in achieving these new paths and challenges. While the controls add motion, they function well enough where one can get through the game without needing full mastery. But by that point, you feel the need of seeing what kind of challenges lie in the other stages, so you go back to them and see what you can do differently to open them up. Let me put it like this. While the original incentive of get the highest score you can and get a medal for it is here, they now include more medals to find that often rely on you looking in different areas, killing certain enemies, or killing them in certain ways, as well as collecting 3 special gold rings that form them. Because the game uses a level select system instead of straightforward progression, you often go back a lot just to get another shot at it, which for me gets me going, oh, I almost had it, so close. Legitimate reactions for a game I know I can do well in, but I just need to do it a bit better. I don't usually try to 100% in games unless I know I can do it, and despite all the crap people give this game because of the controls, I would go on to get all the medals. I'm not even a hardcore gamer, but if even Polygon couldn't beat this game yet do so for Dark Souls, something must be wrong. All the more reason for me to say, it's not bad, you just need to get good. Oh, but I'm not done with controls. See, another neat thing you can do is hold ZL to do a target view on the main screen. This causes the camera to fixate on a target closest to your reticle, which, when viewed by others, makes for some really cool dynamic shots, especially during boss fights, as in the true spirit of Platinum games, the bosses are all very big and have really cool feels to them, especially the Mother Strider, who gave me thoughts of Zoofarg from Xenoblade X, in that it's a big-ass mech that slowly walks around but can easily destroy you if you're not careful. When you know what you're doing and you're multitasking well with both screens, it's easy to put on a show for viewers at home. It's the kind of dynamic viewpoint that I feel can sell games more than pre-rendered cutscenes. For when you see people actually playing the game and it ends up looking like a cutscene, then you know it's legit. Graphically speaking, it's pretty well done for Wii U standards and can even run at 1080p and 60 FPS, which makes all the aerial combat all the more epic than even Ratchet and Clank's. But going back to that whole frame rate police thing, I really don't care if the game runs at 30 FPS or 60 and then whatever resolution you got. I just want the game to function, as I see too many games that are buggy and glitch-filled to where I wonder how they even get perfect scores. If you can get the game to run at the desired specs while still fulfilling the kind of gameplay and style you want, then fine. I won't mind a few dips as long as it doesn't happen the entire time like Batman Arkham Knight on PC. And I don't care what the frame rate police say, priority should be in having them function above all else. If the yearly delays for this game were to tighten the game up and to make it more presentable, then it would be that much worth it, because as a game, it's certainly fun in that it gives you the immersive experience of being an R-Wing pilot in a world that has people shooting at you from all different angles, and you have to be aware of it at all times, just like Fox McCloud himself. And it's more than I can say for the current line of VR games I've been seeing lately, and how they seem to break just as much as current games. However, if games and the way we play them are to change, someone has to try innovating. It might not always work, but even with Kinect, you can't fault them for trying to be different. They just have to make sure they have their work well done and enough to where anyone can pick it up and play. While a learning curve is still there, it isn't as steep as people make it out to be, and the end result was a more satisfying experience than, say, Overwatch Beta. But now let's talk about some actual faults of the game, not counting controls, which are subjective due to people's preferences in control style. I'm a bit disappointed that there's only ever one version of the Andros fight, as in there's no fake or true ending to be had. The fight itself is cool, but you'd think they'd have a bit more after including their own plot on why things happened. Also, it's a bit disappointing that the returning helper AI, Bill and Kat, only get one stage to themselves to help you. Though with Kat, she does show up for 3 stages, but only helps very briefly in 1. Then, even with the mastered controls, some bosses are still rather cheap. And the only real expert mode of this game is the Black R-Wing that gives you increased damage, but lets you fire off more charged shots than normal. Speaking of modes, while replayability in the main game comes in getting medals, and the training missions you unlock as well, the most you get is from arcade mode that makes the game feel like traditional Star Fox, with different high score sets depending on the order of stages you go through. But as for multiplayer, the only one the game naturally has is co-op, where one controls the R-Wing with a regular controller, while the other uses the gamepad to aim and shoot. So if you want to be like Poe and Finn from Star Wars, there you go. The online multiplayer, though, comes in the form of Star Fox Guard, which is a fun little tower defense game where you shoot invading robots with laser-mounted cameras. It's got 6 hours worth of missions, which is about as long as completing the main stuff in Zero, though with Zero it's apparently 18 if you want to actually complete everything. Otherwise, much like Super Mario 3D World and the like, even with the high replay value, it might not be enough to constitute the $60 price tag, though it's $50 if you're going digital, as the former is for both games at once and in physical form. Though considering Transformers Devastation came out at $50 and having roughly the same amount of hour completion as Zero, it seems about right for a Platinum game. But even with all that said, I am not ashamed to say that this is no guilty pleasure of mine. I truly believe that it's an underrated game that is essential to any Wii U library. It sucks that this game might not sell well due to the big controller issue, but I will go on record for saying that this is the best Star Fox game to come out as of late, at the very least better than 64. I also find it the best Wii U game to be released so far in 2016. If you can summon the patience to learn a new control scheme, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the fun that can be had. No way is this the worst game to come out this year, and I will use this video to contest it. Well, there you go. 2 good games in 1 video. Now, what am I going to do before next time? Well, I do have Darksiders 2 on Wii U, thanks to the Humble Bundle. Let's see how that plays. Well, this looks promising.
How could one ship take us down? It never pays to underestimate Star Fox.